Tails Miniseries Issue 10. Oh, so the Tails making his own comic segments take place during his actual adventure, not after. Alright then. Again, they're not really worth showing off even if I had access to them. The Echidna guy tells Tails that he has been chosen to share secrets of the past and a vision of the future. Why him? As far as these guys know, Tails is just some screw-up who got his arm and tail broken. If they knew about him to respect him because they have psychics who can see the future, then why is the Echidna guy calling him Double Tail instead of Tails? You'd think that if they had the ability to see him in the future, you'd think they'd know his name. I guess Double Tail is supposed to be a sort of like high and mighty title, but it sounds more like an insult or a casual nickname. I don't understand why Tails doesn't want to learn these secrets, since the whole reason he came on an adventure was to be a hero of his own, and he's clearly being told he's the chosen one. You'd think he'd jump at the opportunity for this. But I guess he cares more about stopping Eggman than listening to a bunch of exposition. And with just one panel of learning about this Echidna's motivation, I absolutely fucking hate him. Oh, the Echidnas were spoiling the natural beauty of the sky. Can't you see all the non-existent pollution in this panel? How dare they build harmless skyscrapers and life-saving medical technology? Fuck this ideology and everything it stands for. I'm with technology all the way. Better than dying at the age of 30 in the backwoods from an easily curable disease. Hell, I have asthma, so if it weren't for modern technology, I wouldn't even be alive. So you know what, Aether? Fuck you. And it wouldn't be so bad if the comic made it clear that Aether is dead wrong. But they seem to be pretending that he's completely right and not being an irrational coot at all. I mean, Tails' friend is Rotor, an engineer. You'd think that he would want to defend technology because of that. But he doesn't say anything. They were so busy that they didn't notice a giant white comet coming for them until it was too late. What? If they had that kind of technology, you'd think they would have had their astronomers notice the comet long before it would have been a problem and gotten rid of it somehow, instead of having to resort to drastic measures. I call bullshit. This lore in the Echidnas is all very interesting, don't get me wrong. I love the concept of an ultra-advanced Echidna race, even if Sonic Adventure would completely disprove it. And it's a cool origin of Angel Island that the Echidnas lifted their city from the very spot Tails is in right now to create the floating island to avoid a comet. I love that, but we didn't fucking need the worthless anti-technology rant that came out of complete nowhere with no real provoking. It's revealed that this crazy old coot is Knuckles' great-grandfather, who is still alive for some reason. Either Echidnas take longer to die of old age, or this guy is using the very same medical technology that he hates so much in order to stay alive for so long. What a hypocrite. He doesn't even look old, so maybe it's the former. If this guy's related to Knuckles, then not only is he a senile, hating of technology old coot, this comic was made with technology by the way, but worse, he's also an extremely neglectful family member for letting Knuckles have to take care of himself on his own with no parental figures. What if Knuckles got hurt or sick and needed someone to take care of him? He lives alone, so who would even know he needed help? After Tails is forced to learn what the Echidna guys want him to know, with Tails being too stupid to realize he's too injured to fight Eggman anyways, we cut to Crocobot with the blimp of Eggman telling him through an intercom that the docking tether wasn't deployed in time. Crocbot tells him that there is a technical glitch and he should swing around again. Naturally, Crocbot doesn't want Eggman to think he can't handle the problem he's dealing with, and says that he'll call him back. So this is a sort of personality trait that he shows that helps to make him feel a bit more like a character. He's embarrassed of the fact that he has problems and doesn't want Eggman to know that he can't handle them. So he feels like he has an ego, just like Eggman does. He wants to prove himself. So that's still more of a personality than the other Freedom Fighters have had. Curse these heroes? Again, why would you call your enemies heroes? That would imply that he knows he's in the wrong, which is psychologically impossible. He'd be the hero of his own story. The Australian freedom fighters show up storming his base, and Crocbot released a giant robot shaped like a ram to fight them. How do these guys expect to fight Eggman and whatnot with no special powers of their own, and no weapons to make up for that lack of usefulness? Pretty sure kicking the robots would break their feet. We cut back to Tails receiving a long, boring history lecture about the first walkers around the dinosaur times we already know about since Sonic was sent back to them. And then the Ice Age coming after the sky turned green. So I guess a Chaos Emerald crashing into the world caused an Ice Age because it felt like it? Because it got up on the wrong side of the bed that morning. And those who survived witnessed the coming of the Chaos Emeralds. So far this history is extremely similar to our own with the exception of the Walkers and the Chaos Emeralds, so this feels a little pointless. Over the centuries, the Chaos Emeralds have inspired warship, makes sense, and technological advances capable of driving those who harness it mad. And Tails was chosen by the Emeralds to use them for something really great. I guess they knew he'd be a hero ahead of time? And then we unnecessarily have Tails go through a mind screw where it's revealed the ancient walkers were speaking through him, he was hearing voices and speaking the story because of them, and he's arbitrarily lied to about all of this and told that the ancient walkers were always just statues. Why? This is very unnecessary. Okay, I guess it's to establish the ancient walkers are magical by having Tails, like, be spoken through, but all of Tails' injuries were healed up by them. So you'd think that'd be enough to establish they're magical. Well, if they're so magical, why don't they just use their powers to stop Eggman? And Tails is told that he'll need all of his resources to help fight Eggman in the near future. And that's when one of the useless Australian freedom fighters falls into him. I don't understand why the Echidna guy left so quickly and made Tails wonder if he was going nuts. Seriously, this guy's insane. He has no real motivation to any of the weird things he's doing. Oh good. The girl actually knows that the old Echidna was there and was talking to Tails. So she isn't as annoying as she was threatening to be from earlier. We cut back to the Australian freedom fighters fighting Crocbot's robot, and the kangaroo guy pulls out of his pouch one of his boomerangs. So now it's more believable that these guys can actually fight robots because, like Sally's trainees, they have special tools to rely on to make up for their lack of special powers. After the robot gets destroyed, Tails flies into the Crocbot's room, holding the girl, and the girl kicks him from behind so that the hook, which she was using to carefully allow the blimp to land, starts swinging wildly. This is bad news for Crocbot, as he was told by Eggman that he could cause an explosion if he screwed up letting the blimp land. For some reason. Guess it wasn't built very well. This destroys the blimp and ruins Crocbot's plan. Oh, Crocbot calls Tails a two-tailed freak too. That makes sense. He's a villain. So, he attacks him and brags that he's still kept an ace in the hole, a tank that can go straight through the walls so that he can escape. Why is the hippie wasting his time singing about peace? This character never should have existed in the first place. He's not endearing, he's just there a sad attempt to be memorable. Fortunately, the kangaroo has another boomerang with him, and Tails flies while carrying the hippie when he could have easily carried the girl instead, so that the hippie can throw it at the tank, causing it to fall off the cliff and into the crater. I assume the reason the hippie is stealing the spotlight by being the one to use the boomerang is that boomerangs are pretty difficult to throw properly, so Tails had to leave it up to him to throw it, because he has more experience with boomerangs. So that was it? The fight ends with just 2 throws of exploding boomerangs? That's kind of anticlimactic. Very little actually happened here. Also, the explosion creates an image of the Echidna guy, I guess because he insisted on his image being created by the exploding boomerangs that were made of the technology he hates so much. Okay? So on top of being a crazy technology hater, messing with Tails, and a neglectful grandfather, we can't add too much of an ego to the list. I love how Tails gets character development here, for lack of a better word, by coming to the understanding that his friends were treating him the way they did out of love for him, and that he missed them now. Makes perfect sense that he started to miss them after he was asked to join a different group of freedom fighters, which would have made his abandoning of his friends complete. Of course, the minute Tails wants to leave for home, he's able to. And thank God, because I'd hate to have to sit through more issues of Tails being with these bland, lifeless characters with zero personality. Tails looks really horrible in this panel, by the way. Something about it just seems off. Anyways, the underwater freedom fighters with a very hard to remember name show up in a Chekhov's gun, which is always something I can compliment about a story, and allow Tails to go home with the submarine fixed. It'll take a few days for him to go home though, so it's a good thing there's plenty of food and water in there for him, I assume, and a toilet, and that nothing really bad happens to him before he can reach home. like getting captured by Eggman. Also, I don't think we ever see how his friends were reacting to him being gone, and happily hugging him when he came back, which would have better reaffirmed the fact that they indeed did do it out of love for him. Instead, we just have to take Tails' word for it that they weren't condescending with him on purpose. I'm really glad Tails got his injuries healed in this issue, because it allowed him to have moments of confidence after all, even if it was more about carrying other people and letting them do the actual fighting for him. He also came to the conclusion that he misses his friends and they love him pretty naturally. Also, I like how Tails was just as unenthusiastic about getting a whole bunch of pointless ham exposition dumped on him as the audience. This story was written by Mike Gallagher. Although I love the concepts that were introduced to us through that, the Ice Age being caused by the crashing of Chaos Emeralds, and the echidnas being ultra advanced, and the comic's origin of why the island floats, I wonder how that's going to factor into the adventure adaptation when Chaos comes in. And I like seeing at least a short glimpse of how the presence of the Chaos Emeralds have affected the world's cultures throughout history, with them being worshipped as well as used for technology that apparently drives people mad, because they are Chaos Emeralds after all. So I love the additions to the lore that this miniseries have given us, not just with the Echidna guy's speech, but also with the revelation that there are even more freedom fighter groups fighting Eggman all over the world, a concept that does make sense rather than just one group of heroes being in the world. Unfortunately, all the other freedom fighters are completely forgettable and lack personalities, with the sole exception of the hippie who's annoying, out of place, and only exists to try to be memorable. And the Echidna guy, Arthur, got my immediate hatred when he revealed his arbitrary old-fashioned hatred of technology, the very thing this comic was made with. Not to mention he just leaves his own flesh and blood to raise himself on an island like a neglectful parent. Who cares if Knuckles breaks his leg or something? And messes with Tails' head for no reason and has an ego the size of a nuclear cloud as well. I mean, why else would he want his image to be in the explosion created by Pomerang? Which was a cool concept, by the way. I liked that thing. So the main problems with the issue, and miniseries in general, are that it was more a story about bland, lifeless new characters than a story where Tails got to be competent and do stuff. But honestly, this issue has so many things about it that I like that I end up finding it to be a pretty alright story. Tails still got to save the day in the end, which was great, and even the exposition that Tails didn't need to know at all was actually pretty fascinating world building. The games never cared about world building, making you feel like the characters are in a living, breathing world that doesn't just exist for the main characters to fight Eggman in it. Closest it came to that was Unleashed, and all that lore was just for one game. I just wish that Arthur wasn't such a crazy old coot. All in all, while I enjoyed the Sally miniseries a lot better, with it giving me a lot more respect for Sally than the little amount I got for Tails here, the Tails miniseries ended up being, well, a disappointment with all the times Tails just got hurt and needed to be rescued, with the story focusing too little on a character we actually care about. So it was distracted, to say the least. But he at least did get a few moments in the sun, and there was plenty of world building to be found. So it wasn't nearly as bad as I thought it was going to be, but the Sally miniseries is still better, and it has a lot of problems. Next up is issue 30. No, sorry, it actually isn't. Instead, next up is Supersonic vs. Hyper Knuckles. So Supersonic fights regular Knuckles with his hands turned into buzzsaws? That'd be a pretty one-sided fight. Nah, just kidding. Instead, Supersonic fights Hyper Knuckles. So wouldn't that mean that Knuckles would win because he's not just super but also hyper? That'd again be a pretty one-sided fight. Although maybe they're just using it, not realizing what hyper is supposed to mean. See you next time.